Hi guys, it's Jennifer Steele, professor at American University, and today we are in EDU 610, Overview of Qualitative and Quantitative Research Strategies, and we're working on topic 6, Excel assignment, which is about creating bar graphs using Microsoft Excel, and specifically we're going to be building on the same assignment that you did in topic 5, where you were creating conditional means for mean test scores for kids in public versus private schools. Only today we're going to be doing, we're going to be converting that into a bar graph where you have a bar for student achievement in math in public schools, another bar for student achievement in math in private schools, and other bars for reading scores in both types of schools. So we're building on the work that you did previously. And I'm going to just walk you through 2 different ways of making these bar graphs in Microsoft Excel. So let me share my screen. And so let's see, let's share screen 1, which means I'm going to drag the assignment over here to screen 1. And also we have the data sheet. Now you can start with the fresh version of the data sheet, which might require you to recalculate the conditional means, but you learned that last week, so that wouldn't take long. Or you can build on the same version of the data sheet that you worked on last week where you had already calculated your conditional means. So right now I'm working in a version of the data sheet that has the conditional means already calculated. And you might recall that in topic 5, we did reading deviation scores, reading squared deviation scores. We used that to manually obtain standard deviations. And then we also, for reading and math, well, we use that to manually obtain standard deviations in reading, and then we also automatically obtain, in the fast way, obtain standard deviations for reading and math. And then we had also calculated public school means and private school means for reading and math. Mean differences, so the difference between public school and private school means, and standardized mean differences for both reading and math. So that is the work that we did previously. Now what we're going to do today is use that information to create bar graphs. And there are 2 ways to do this. One is with pivot graphs or pivot charts, and the other is to do it with a manual chart creation tool in Excel. So the first thing you're going to do is actually save a new version of your data set. And this, we're still working in the high school and beyond data set with a subset of 200 students who were 10th graders in the year 1980. And again, you'll recall that we have their ID numbers, their gender, race, socioeconomic status, whether they went to a public or private school, which we also created a labeled version of in column M, and the program that they're in, and their test scores in 5 subject areas. But you'll recall that we focused last time on reading and math, and we will have the same focus in this lesson as well. So if we go back to our assignment sheet, this is just a reminder to save your data sheet as your last name _ topic 6, because now we're working in topic 6. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to create these clustered bar graphs. And what we want is a bar graph that at the end is going to look something like this. It's got reading scores and math scores in public schools and private schools. It's got a reasonable title, which is Figure 1, Test Scores by School Type. It's got labeled axes, test scores, and it's got pattern-coded bars. So that's what we're aiming toward. So let's see there. Let me show you the 2 different ways that you can do this. So the first way that I'm going to show you is section 2, option A on your assignment sheet. And that way is creating a pivot chart. So a pivot chart or pivot table is a tool in Microsoft Excel that creates tables and charts and does some of your calculations for you so that you don't have to manually do all of your calculations. So that's the value of a pivot table or pivot chart, is it does some of your calculations for you and therefore can be a time saver. So, so to create the pivot chart, we're going to go to our data sheet and we're actually going to highlight the whole sheet. And in order to highlight the whole sheet, we're going to click this little cell in the top left corner. And it's so basically you're clicking in the very top left of the data sheet, and that's going to highlight your entire data sheet. And then we're going to go insert on our menu at the top of the Excel window. We're going to insert, we could insert pivot table. By the way, if you're working in on a Macintosh computer, on an Apple computer, it is possible that this pivot chart option will not work as easily for you. Historically, the Mac version of Excel has not had pivot charts, it's only had pivot tables. So if you're working on a Mac, you can try to follow along with the pivot chart option, but if you prefer, you can also use the manual option, which I'll show you in a moment. So the pivot chart option goes like this. We go insert, and then instead of pivot table, which you can do if you don't have pivot charts, you can still follow along and do pivot tables. But I'm going to do pivot chart over here, and I'm going to go pivot chart and pivot table because that will give me both and you can kind of see what's happening. Okay, so I'm inserting pivot chart and pivot table, and I'm going to use the defaults that it's giving me. Select table or range is this entire data sheet, and choose where you want the pivot table report to be placed. We're going to place it in a new worksheet, so it's not on top of our data. It's going to be in a new worksheet in the same Excel file. And those are the defaults, so I'm just going to click OK. And voila, I have a new worksheet right here. So the next step is to, we're going to see a field list, and we want to choose school labeled, which is the labeled version of the public-private school indicator. And that's going to be one of the variables that we add to our pivot chart. So, okay, so here are our pivot chart fields, and I'm going to add school labeled. I'm going to click that, and now that is selected. So the next step is I've selected school labeled, and that is going to be part of my pivot chart, which is this graph right here, and it's part of my pivot table, which is this little table over on the left. And in either case, I can click the drop-down menu of school labeled, and I want to tell the chart that I don't need to see the blank category, because there are two categories, there are two categories I want to see, public schools and private schools. I don't need to see any blanks, so I'm going to deselect blank. Okay, and I did that by choosing the drop-down menu. I could do that here, or I could do it here on the chart. Okay, so let's go back to our instructions. Okay, so we already omitted the blank category. Now we're going to use the drop-down menu again, and we're going to sort our data in descending order so that public schools are listed first. And the reason for that is public schools are the larger group. They're kind of the default group. So I think it's going to look aesthetically better if we show public schools first, but that's an aesthetic choice. So we're going to come here to the drop-down menu, or we could also do it over here. And you're going to choose to sort your data from Z to A, which is in descending order. You could also click more sort options and click descending Z to A by school labeled, whatever you prefer. But in any case, you can use more sort options, or you can just click on the immediately when you open the drop-down menu, you'll see descending Z to A. Okay, so now you see that that worked, and public is now listed first and private is listed second because they are in reverse alphabetical order now. Okay, so now we are going back to our instructions, and we want to choose math and reading test scores from our field list. And we're going to drag those, depending on how your field list appears, you may have to drag them onto the table, or you may just be able to click them and they will appear where they need to appear. So I clicked reading and it appeared on my graph and on my table. Now I'm going to click math. It also appeared on my graph and on my table. You could have also clicked these and dragged them into your values list down here like this, click and drag. Okay, so now in my values list down here, I currently see the sum of reading scores and the sum of math scores. And I don't want to see sums, I want to see averages, because our question is, how do average test scores differ in reading and math between public and private schools? So I want to, instead of sum, I want to go click here on sum of read, and I want to go to value field settings, and I want to choose average instead of sum. Same here, sum of math, value field settings, average. Better. So now I see public school average scores over here and private school average scores over here. I've got my legend right here, and everything's coming along nicely. I've got test scores over here on the y-axis, and I've got public and private on the x-axis. So, and then the reading and math categories are color coded. Okay, so that looks good. What I want to do now, I've just finished all of the steps for option A, but now I'm going to fast forward past option B all the way to page 2, or page 3 rather, format your graph. And we're going to use the same formatting guidelines for options A and B. So the way that I want to format the graph is I want to add data labels. I want to add a title to my graph. And I want my graph to be, instead of color coded, I want it to be pattern coded so that it would make sense even if it were printed in black and white. Or if it were read by a person who was completely colorblind. And what else? Oh, and I want to add a value label to the, I want to add a axis label to the y-axis. I think those are my main steps that I want to do in terms of formatting. Okay, so the way that I do this is okay, so first I want to, oh, I know, we go to design up here in our, at the top Excel menu, we go to design, and we want to add a chart element. And specifically, we want to add data labels, which is going to tell us the height of our bars. And it's going to make the graph slightly easier to read. If we had a really busy looking graph with a lot of bars, the data labels might clutter it up and make it look messy. But in this case, we only have 4 bars, so I think it's going to be clearer if we have data labels. And we're going to put them at the outside end, and because it's going to look less cluttered, I think, and be easier to read. So we're going to click outside end, and voila, now we have data labels. The only problem, and these tell us the heights of our bars. The only problem is that for the public schools, these are not rounded off. So I want to go back to my pivot table right here, and I want to round these to the nearest 10th. Actually, I want to round all of them to the nearest 10th. So I'm going to highlight all of the data cells that I want to round in the data table, in the source table, which is this pivot table right here. And I'm going to come over here to number formatting in the top center of my Excel screen. And I'm just going to decrease decimal. I'm going to click to decrease decimal. Whoops. No. Yeah. There we go. And I'm going to get it down to 1 place past the decimal. So we're rounding to the 10th place. Okay. So that is done and looks better. So now we can see average reading scores in public schools, 51.8, average reading scores in private schools, 54.3, etc. I also want to add, oh, another way, I can go up here to design, add chart element, and add an axis title. And I want to add a primary vertical or y-axis title, which is going to be, we're going to call this scores. Yeah, and then we're going to add a chart title and call it Figure 1 Test Scores by School Type. So we can also come up here to add chart element and do chart title above chart or centered overlay and add a chart title. But another way you can do this in many versions of Excel is you can click the chart or graph itself and click this plus and add a chart element that way. And we're going to add chart title. And the chart title, again, is going to be Figure 1 Test Scores by School Type. Okay, looks good. I'm going to make this whole chart a little bit bigger. I'm going to click all of the axes and axis labels. Wait, actually, that's not working too well. I'm going to come back to my design. Or actually, I'm going to come to my home screen and see if I can increase the font. So I'm going to increase the fonts on my home screen like this. Oh, that just increased the fonts of the value labels. But I'm going to click the whole graph and see if it will increase the fonts slightly. Good, because I really recommend that your fonts be at least 10 to 11 point if you're creating a graph for a research paper. And if you're creating a graph for PowerPoint slides, I really suggest that you aim for 16 to 18 points and ideally even 20 points or higher, but at minimum 16 to 18 points for graphs in PowerPoint slides. Okay, so I've increased our fonts a little. I'm just gonna play with that a little bit more. And that looks good. Now I want to change these color-coded patterns to pattern-coded. So I'm going to click the orange data series, and then I'm going to right-click, sorry, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose fill, and I want text, no, I want, how do I do this? Texture, let me go to the instructions. Fill, pattern fill, and choose a distinctive pattern. Okay, so right click, fill, more fill colors, custom. Why do I not see pattern fill? Oh, no, nope. Picture, gradient. Texture, picture, nope. Let me go to format. Format, shape fill. Picture, gradient, and texture. Let's go to more textures. Here we go. Format data point, pattern fill. And we're going to choose a reasonable pattern. Okay. Yeah, that works. So now we have, oh, whoa, that should be for the whole series. Format data series, that's what we want. Okay. So format data series, pattern fill, and let's choose that pattern. Okay. Okay, that looks better. Format data series, fill, pattern fill. There we go. Now the legend adjusted as well. Okay, now we're going to format the other data series. We could keep it solid since it looks different from the one that we just formatted, but we'll format that one as well. So the key is, I think the piece I forgot before is I had to click format data series, and then I need this data series these data series options to pop up. And then I'm going to choose the fill, which is the paint can. I'm going to click pattern fill, and I'm going to choose a different pattern. How about a diagonal stripe? And okay, good. So now my legend is formatted to match the formatting of this data series. That is the case for both data series. And now if somebody were to print this graph in black and white, they could still distinguish between reading scores and math scores. So now we've finished the pivot chart option, the pivot chart approach to making our graph. So now let's go back to our data sheet and let's do the manual way. If you were not able to do the pivot chart way, let me show you the manual way, because the manual way is always a good fallback. Okay, so this is option B, which is at the top of page 3 of your assignment sheet. So here, you're going to, we're going to highlight the cells where we already did our calculations. And the difference between the pivot chart way and the manual way is that pivot charts do your calculations for you, but the manual way, you do the calculations yourself and then you graph them. So in this case, we already last week calculated public mean and private means for reading and math. And so we're going to use those calculations that we already did manually. And so we're just going to highlight public mean, private mean in cells F203 and F204. And we're going to also highlight reading and math in cells G203, G204, I203, I204. Okay, so we've highlighted everything that we want in our graph. Then we're going to go insert, and we're going to do insert column chart. So it's this little symbol right here, which is the column chart. And we're going to do a 2D column chart, because 2D is 2D keeps the proportions correct. If you start doing 3D, it actually throws off the proportions and can be misleading. So I recommend 2D. Okay, so we have a 2D chart. This just appeared as soon as I created the chart. And we can actually right click to move chart to its own sheet. So we'll give it a new sheet, which we'll call chart 3. Okay, so now it's its own sheet. But we have to format it because it doesn't quite look right. Okay, so for one thing that you'll notice that public is in blue and private is in orange. And instead, we want it to be clustered so that public is clustered at left and private is clustered at right. And blue and orange will denote reading versus math. So we've got to change that. The way to change that is to right-click your graph and select data. Anytime you want to change your data or manipulate your data in a manual graph, you right-click and choose select data. When we do that, we're going to switch row and column. And voila, we now have public down here as one group of bars and private at right as a second group of bars. So that looks good, but we have this big gap in the middle, and that's because we have one bar for series 1, which is reading, a gap for series 2, which is writing, which is blank, and a bar for series 3, which is math. So we need to get rid of that blank writing bar, and that's because we have writing scores right here in H, and they're blank. So that's why it's showing up like that. So we're going to get rid of that. So again, we right-click and we select data. When we select data, we're going to get rid of series 2 because series 2 is writing, and let's just get rid of that. Okay, so that's much better. But we still don't have proper labels for reading and math. And so we're going to right-click again, select data, and we're going to edit the names of the series. So we're going to go Legends Entry Series, click Edit, and we want to edit the name. So the way that we edit the name is we choose this little arrow right here, and it's going to let us go to our data sheet. So once we've done that, we go back to sheet 1 where the data live, and we go up here and we're just going to highlight G1 through I1, and that's going to tell Excel that the titles of these series are reading, writing, and math. Okay, so, and then we click OK. Oh, that did not work. Okay, let's, oh, I know why. Okay. The title, that would have worked if we had done it in a different order. Okay, so let me show you the order we were supposed to do. And we could still recover that by editing the names of each of these data series. So this would be read. And then this one will be, we'll leave that blank, and this one will be math. You just type series name math, and that took care of that. But you could have also, we could have edited it when it was in our horizontal category axis labels before we did the switch row and column, and then highlighting G through I would have worked. But the problem is I did it in the wrong order. So apologies for that. But we fixed it by just typing edit, and then typing read as the name, and edit and typing math as the name once reading and math were classified as data series. So we click OK, and now my fonts are way too small. They're almost impossible to read. So I'm going to choose the entire graph, and I'm just going to go over here to increase my font sizes. And in this case, I'm increasing them to like 16, and they're only just now starting to look readable. So I'm going to go with 16 for this. Okay, so we now have everything that we need, and we're just going to once again click add chart element to add our data labels, our axis title, and we're going to add test scores as our axis title. And then our chart title, we're going to click right here on chart title and type figure 1 test scores by school type. Once again, we're going to format our bars. And so to format, we're going to right click, format data series. It's going to pop up our data series formatting menu. We're going to click the paint can for fill. We're going to choose pattern fill, and we're going to choose a reasonable pattern. This time I'm going to do darker diagonal stripes for reading, for math. And then I'm going to right click the other data series, format data series, click fill, pattern fill, and I'm going to do polka dots. Let's do a lighter polka dot for more contrast. Okay, so that's going to be reading, and the downward diagonal lines is going to be math. And we'll close out of that. Oh, I need to get rid of this word axis title. So this axis title I'm going to delete because it's already clear that my x-axis, we have public school mean scores and private school mean scores. So I'm going to delete this x-axis title. I think I'm going to make the fonts a little bit bigger on the legend. Just going to click, there we go. I'm going to make the the x-axis legend a little bigger. Click the y-axis legend title, make that a little bigger, and make my overall title a little bigger. And so this one is finished, and that's how we do the bar graph manually. And again, we still have the bar graph that was done. Let's see, where's the one that we did with? I think, where's the one that we did with the pivot chart? Okay, that would be sheet 5. So sheet 5, we have the pivot chart version, and sheet chart 3, we have the manual version, and we have completed both parts, both options or ways of doing the Excel graphing assignment. And one final takeaway as you're doing graphing, as you're creating graphs in Excel, as you saw, there were times when things didn't quite conform to what when I opened a menu and it didn't quite conform to what I expected to see. And that is very typical when you're making graphs in Excel. And so what to do when you encounter that is continue to play around or tinker and look at your menu options and try it a different way. And if you really get stuck, Google your problem to find a solution. But the reason that this happens is every version of Microsoft Excel is a little bit different. And there are really many, many ways to do the exact same task because these menus are redundant and there are many different ways to bring up the menus. So you have to be a little bit patient and you have to point and click and see how things look and play around with your font sizes and your patterns to achieve a nice, clear and readable aesthetic. And just be patient, and you will find that it quickly becomes very easy to make your graphs quickly in Microsoft Excel. And just remember that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that's why it's very valuable to be able to make graphs in Excel. So hope that this instructional video was useful. Have a great day, and I'll see you for the next video.